These are the 8 richest black families that own Detroit, and how they built their fortunes will certainly surprise you. You will see a former street gang member, who a judge threatened with prison, who turned his life around into a TV empire. But that's nothing next to another family on this list that quietly makes one out of every 10 car seats in North America. And at number 1, we have an NBA champion who ignored his basketball money and built the largest black-owned auto supplier in the entire country. Let's get into it. Number 8. The Mathis Dynasty. We're kicking this off with a name you almost certainly know, because his face was on daytime TV for over 3,000 episodes. But the story of how Greg Mathis got there is genuinely wild. Because this man was, at one point, a high school dropout, a member of a Detroit street gang called the Errol Flynns, and a juvenile locked up in the Wayne County Jail on a weapons charge. That is not the resume you'd expect from a future judge. Here's the turning point. A judge looked at young Greg Mathis and gave him a brutal ultimatum. Get your GED or face serious prison time. And Mathis, who'd been raised in the Detroit projects by a single mother working as a nurse's aide, made the choice that changed everything. He took the deal. He got the GED, then he kept going, all the way through Eastern Michigan University and law school, and became the youngest judge ever elected to Detroit's 36th District Court. But the real money came from television. Mathis turned his gavel into a syndicated empire with the court show Judge Mathis, which ran for decades, cracked over 3,000 episodes, and won a Daytime Emmy. That machine built him an estimated fortune between $50 and $65 million. And here's what makes him belong on this specific list. He never actually left Detroit behind. In 2009, the city literally named a street after him, Mathis Avenue, built on the exact site of the Herman Gardens housing projects where he grew up. Think about that for a second. A kid from the projects who becomes so successful they tear down the projects and name the new street after him. He also runs a community center and a youth program in the city, pulling other at-risk kids off the exact path he was once on. From a jail cell to a street sign. Not a bad way to open a list. Now, Mathis built his fortune on television, but our next family built theirs on something you've physically sat on, probably thousands of times without ever knowing their name. Number 7. The Barfield Dynasty. Number 7 is the definition of what people call stealth wealth, a family worth up to $95 million that made its money in an industry nobody thinks about, and it all started with a broom. Because before there was any fortune, there was John Barfield, working as a janitor at the University of Michigan. That's the starting line here. A janitor. But John had a plan. He saved up his wages, bought some basic cleaning equipment, and launched his own home-based cleaning business. That little operation grew, he sold it to a major corporation, and then he did the smart thing. He took that money and reinvested every dollar into a completely different game. That new venture was the Bartek Group, founded back in 1976 in Ypsilanti. And Bartek got huge. It moved into the world of staffing and workforce solutions, basically managing enormous armies of contract workers for giant companies. By the time the family strategically sold it in 2015 to a UK conglomerate, Bartek was doing $300 million in annual revenue, managing $3 billion in client staffing spend, and deploying a contract workforce of nearly 123,000 people. From one man with a mop to a workforce of over 100,000. And what's fascinating is where the family went after the sale. They didn't buy yachts, they went full Ivy League boardroom. John Barfield, who ran the company for decades, is a Princeton man who literally sat on the university's board of trustees, and he's a Harvard Law graduate on top of that. Today, the family's wealth sits quietly in private equity and board seats at major companies like the utility giant CMS Energy. No flash, no headlines, just a janitor's son sitting in some of the most powerful boardrooms in the country. That is stealth wealth in its purest form. From a family that stays completely invisible, we now move to one whose name is tied to global logistics, and to a member who now holds actual political office in Washington. Number 6. The Richardson Dynasty. Number 6 is a masterclass in building a business that simply refuses to die, no matter what the economy throws at it. This is the Richardson family, led by Marine Corps veteran Leon Richardson, with a fortune sitting north of $100 million. And the genius of it is a single, Brutally simple idea. Leon founded the Chemico Group back in 1989, and it operates in a world most people never see: industrial chemical management. Basically, the messy, complicated fluids and chemicals that heavy factories need to actually function, Chemico handles all of it. But here's the philosophy that made him rich, and I love how blunt it is. Richardson decided his company would only work in industries, quote, where paint is applied or the end unit has wheels. Speaking of quietly building something serious while everyone else is chasing the spotlight, that is what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 smart ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workout straight from your finger. A week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the sharp, deliberate play that grew it into a powerhouse. Think about how clever that actually is. By locking onto that rule, he built a business that could ride out anything. When car manufacturing slowed down, he was already expanding into defense contracts, into aerospace, into heavy appliances. Anywhere something was getting painted or rolling on wheels, Chemico was there managing the chemicals. That diversification turned a regional startup into one of the largest minority-owned chemical companies in America, doing over $250 million a year across 30 states and 3 countries. And the industry respects him. General Motors has named Chemico its Supplier of the Year 8 separate times. 8. Leon has taken that credibility and spent over 15 years on the board of Michigan's Minority Supplier Development Council, fighting to get other Black-owned businesses the same access to those massive corporate contracts. And in 2025, he was appointed to the board of a publicly traded real estate trust with a multi-billion-dollar portfolio, pushing the family's influence into big-league finance. Quiet, disciplined, and absolutely everywhere. Now, Richardson keeps the factories running with chemicals. Our next family keeps the entire city moving, with trucks. And one of them traded the boardroom for the halls of Congress. Number 5. The James Dynasty. Number 5 has been controlling how Detroit physically moves for over 50 years. This is the James family, and their fortune, sitting between $120 and $150 million, is built on the unglamorous but absolutely essential world of trucking and logistics. It started in 1971 when patriarch John A. James founded a company that would grow into James Group International. And getting it off the ground meant a real fight. Back in the 1970s, the family had to wage a multi-year legal war just to secure basic hauling permits, battling a system and established competitors that did not want to hand a Black-owned trucking company those routes. They didn't just win. Their fight actually helped push forward the federal deregulation of the entire trucking industry. That's the kind of battle that reshapes a whole sector. Today, the family empire moves parts and coordinates global supply chains through a network of companies, pulling in well over $129 million a year, and they're backing a massive freight terminal project to modernize how cargo flows through Southwest Detroit. But the James family has a second kind of power that nobody else on this list has: political office. Because John E. James, one of the patriarch's sons, isn't just a businessman. He's a West Point graduate, a former Army captain, and an Iraq War veteran who ran the family company, and then got elected to the United States House of Representatives. So this family holds industrial wealth and a seat in Congress at the same time, while his brother Lauren runs the business side. Blue-collar trucking money and Washington political power in the same bloodline. That combination is rare, and it makes the James dynasty one of the most quietly influential families in the entire state. From a family that moves the cargo, we go to a family whose late founder figured out how to turn cheeseburgers into aerospace parts. Yes, you read that right. Number 4. The Pickard Dynasty. Number 4 might have the single smartest wealth-building move on this entire list, and it starts in the most unexpected place imaginable: a McDonald's. Back in 1971, a man named Dr. William Pickard became one of the very first Black franchise owners of a McDonald's. And while flipping burgers might not sound like the foundation of an industrial empire, Pickard saw it differently. He looked at the steady, reliable cash flow those restaurants generated, and he used it as fuel. He funneled that fast food money straight into a much harder, much higher barrier business, automotive parts manufacturing. He literally turned Big Macs into a manufacturing dynasty. That company became GAA, and it got enormous. Over the decades, GAA generated more than $5 billion in cumulative sales, running manufacturing plants across the US and Canada, supplying parts to absolute titans like Boeing, Ford, General Motors, and Delphi. So that cheeseburger cash flow eventually built parts for airplanes. The family fortune now sits comfortably between $200 and $220 million. But Dr. Pickard was playing an even bigger game than manufacturing. The family diversified in ways that are genuinely impressive, holding a co-managing partnership stake in the MGM Grand Detroit Casino and co-owning Real Times Media, the company behind historic Black publications like the Michigan Chronicle. And Pickard was a serious giver, donating $2 million to Morehouse College along with major gifts to museums and universities. Even the family's mentorship system is codified. Their business philosophy is literally called the SHIPS, a 5-step ladder: internship, mentorship, sponsorship, partnership, and finally, ownership. That's a family that thinks in generations, not quarters. Even after Dr. Pickard's passing, his daughter Mary Victoria and their executive partners keep the entire machine running exactly as he designed it. Now, Pickard turned franchises into factories. Our next family turned a failed steakhouse chain into one of the biggest automotive seating operations in all of North America. Number 3. The Jackson Dynasty. Number 3 is proof that the smartest money in the car business isn't always in building the cars. This is the Jackson family, worth up to $300 million, and they built their empire on selling cars and then turning that cash into concrete and history. Gregory Jackson founded Prestige Automotive back in 1993, after coming up through General Motors' minority leadership training. And he didn't build a dealership, he built a fleet of them. At the family's absolute peak before the 2008 crash, they were running 18 dealerships and grossing an almost unbelievable $1.67 billion a year, staying north of $1 billion in sales for a full decade. That made Prestige one of the largest Black-owned dealership groups in the entire country. But the truly interesting money is in what Jackson did with all that car cash. He poured it into Detroit real estate, and he did it with serious taste. Through his holding company, the family bought the Lafayette Towers, a pair of historic 22-story luxury residential towers designed by one of the most legendary architects of the 20th century. Jackson snapped them up out of foreclosure for under $6 million, then poured $20 million into renovating them. The family also owns a golf course and banquet center, one of the very few Black-owned golf courses anywhere in America. And here's the part that carries real weight. The Jacksons are right now co-leading the rehabilitation of the historic Fisher Body Plant 21, a massive 600,000 square foot factory that sat abandoned for nearly 30 years. The $142 million project is recognized as the largest African-American-led development deal in the history of Detroit. Sit with the symbolism of that. A Black family rebuilding the very auto factories that, generations ago, would have barred their ancestors from any role in management. That's not just a real estate deal. That's history correcting itself. Now, the Jacksons turned dealerships into real estate. Our next family turned a chain of failed steakhouses into billions of dollars of car seats. Number 2. The Hall Dynasty. Number 2 is the one with the steakhouse story, and it's a great one, because the Hall family, worth up to $400 million, built a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing giant on the ashes of total failure. Back in the 1980s, patriarch Ronald Hall Sr. owned a franchise of Bonanza Steakhouses across Detroit. And they collapsed, completely went under. For most people, that's a career-ending disaster. For Hall Sr., it was a pivot point. Instead of retreating, he leaned on his civic and business networks to force his way into a completely different industry, automotive supply. And in 2004, that gamble paid off in historic fashion when the family secured a $500 million supply contract with Ford. the largest minority supplier agreement in automotive history at the time. That company is Bridgewater Interiors, and it is a genuine giant. It pulls in over $2 billion in annual revenue, employs more than 2,400 workers, and here's the stat that lands. Bridgewater makes roughly 10% of all the automotive seating assembled in North America. So the next time you sit down in a brand new car, there's a real chance you're sitting on a Hall family product. From a bankrupt steakhouse to one in every 10 car seats on the continent, and the man running it now might be the most disciplined operator on this list. Ronald Hall Jr. is a West Point graduate and a decorated former Army captain who served in the Persian Gulf War, and then went and got a law degree from the University of Michigan on top of it. His father carefully groomed him for the role, even having him practice corporate law first, which is exactly why this succession went smoothly when so many family businesses tear themselves apart. Under Hall Jr., the company deliberately buys $250 million in goods every year from other minority-owned businesses. They're not just building wealth, they're pulling other black businesses up the ladder with them. Now, the Hall family makes the seats. Our number one family? An NBA champion who could have coasted on his fame forever, and instead built something bigger than any of them. Number 1. The Johnson Dynasty. And here he is, sitting at the very top of black wealth in Detroit. Vincent Johnson. If you followed basketball in the late 80s, you know him as the Microwave, the guy who came off the bench and instantly heated up to help the Detroit Pistons win back-to-back NBA championships in 1989 and 1990. But here's what makes Vinnie Johnson the number one story on this list. He looked at his NBA career earnings and basically ignored them as the endgame. Most athletes treat the league as the peak. Johnson treated it as seed money. In 1995, he founded Piston Automotive, and he deliberately planted it inside Detroit's empowerment zone to create local jobs in his own community. And then he did something almost no retired athlete manages. He built a real, enormous industrial company. Today, the Piston Group is the single largest African-American-owned automotive supplier in the United States, generating over $3 billion in annual revenue. $3 billion with a B. This isn't a vanity project with his name slapped on it. It's a sprawling operation spanning brake and fuel cell assembly, thermal systems, interior components, and more, holding over 2.3 million square feet of industrial space across 5 states and into Canada. And the man lives by what people call stealth wealth. No flashy spending, with his fortune estimated around $500 million, locked up in factories and industrial real estate instead of toys. There's even a perfect full-circle moment in his story. Johnson brought in his former Pistons teammate, James Buddha Edwards, and together they've worked to revive the site of the old Palace of Auburn Hills, the very arena where they won their championships, turning it into an automated plant supplying components for General Motors. He now builds car parts on the same ground where he once won titles. And when a supplier council once challenged his company's minority certification, Johnson fought back hard and publicly, pointing out that he owns 100% of the Piston Group, so by every legal standard, it's his. From the Microwave to a $3 billion industrial empire. That is what number 1 looks like. So there you have it. 8 black families who didn't build their fortunes on fame or luck, but on the hard, unglamorous machinery of the Motor City, auto parts, car seats, chemicals, trucking, and real estate. And did you catch the thread running through all of them? Almost every one of these dynasties took blue-collar industrial contracts, the kind of work the world overlooks, and turned it into hundreds of millions of dollars, then deliberately reinvested it back into Detroit. They're literally rebuilding the same factories and neighborhoods their ancestors were once shut out of. That's not just wealth. That's ownership of the city that tried to keep them out. So, which of these families genuinely surprised you the most? The judge, the janitor's son, or the NBA champ turned industrial titan? Drop it in the comments. We truly love hearing from you. And if you made it all the way to the end, do us a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to Black Status. We'll see you on the next one.